What's going on? I want to welcome you from half court. Today, before we talk about basketball, I do want to say my thoughts and prayers are with the people in East Lansing and at Michigan State University, the victims of the senseless violence and shooting that took place on the campus of East Lansing last night. Quite frankly, I, like many people, am really sick of having to check my phone to make sure that my friends and loved ones are not one of the victims of this senseless act of violence. I personally, like a lot of people, hope that we start to see some change in actual legislation and we can stop seeing this type of act continue to occur when there are active solutions and things that we can take in place. So what I ask before we start this video is please consider reaching out to a local congressman or congresswoman about any potential changes you would like to see. But also, please be sure to just reach out to any loved ones today because you don't know how many days we have on this earth. But with that, let's go ahead and get started with the video. What's going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, February 14th, 2023. I'm your host, Sean Murphy. Today, we got to talk about the backcourt of the Detroit Pistons because Jaden Ivey has been balling out ever since he's become the primary initiator, the number one guy for the Detroit Pistons on the offensive end. He's been averaging 15.8 points, 5.6 assists, 45% shooting from the field, and 42% from beyond the arc. We've been seeing Jaden Ivey just grow in front of our eyes, and it's been a pleasure to see. But on the flip side, a player who's been struggling ever since they've taken kind of the more of the backseat role is Killian Hayes, and he's been a player who's been a topic of conversation. Obviously, we talked about how well he was playing in November and December, and for a lot of the games that Killian was playing, he was doing really well, even up to like a couple of weeks ago. Killian was still having some, really strong performances, but for whatever reason, just over the last couple of weeks, it just seems like Killian is starting to slip back into a slump. Specifically, over the past 7 games, Killian's been averaging 7 points on 27% shooting from the field, 21% from beyond the arc, also averaging 6 assists, but also averaging 2.3 turnovers and 4 personal fouls a game. So the difficult thing and the big question is we saw, Sadiq Bey be traded last week, kind of one of the big members of the core four when the Pistons started the restoration. Who's next? And when could we possibly see a move? And it's really been starting to, now that we've seen how good of a playmaker Jaden Ivey truly is, in addition to everything else that he does, because the biggest thing that, for Killian is not only his defense is obviously one of the big things going for him, but also was his playmaking, was his vision, was his passing. And at times we even see when Killian's, confidence is shaken on the offensive end when he's trying to shoot the ball, his confidence can get shaken with his passing as well. I mean, I think specifically, to the game in Toronto, he had some passes that were just way out of range. And there were like a lot of passes in particular where, Corey Joseph had to jump for a pass. Hamidou Diallo had to save a couple passes from Killian. Like, there were just some reckless passing going on over the last couple weeks just in general. And I think it's just in addition to some of the shooting struggles that he's had. Not saying that, Killian's a bad passer by any stretch of the imagination, but when you have a player who you're kind of like flipping a coin on like what you're getting out of him on a night-to-night basis, and in particular when he's shooting 2 of 21 over the last 2 games. He even had a game like a couple of weeks ago where he went 2 of 10. Or no, I'm sorry, he went 3 of 16. He went 2 of 10 from 3 that night. I mean, that's kind of where it gets into, we know that Killian has had these mental struggles and that, he's never going to be this all-star player on the offensive end. We've always talked about how he just needs to be NBA level. And it seems like there's points where he can be, where he certainly, he certainly had moments where his shot was improved, and he had moments where he was looking like a significantly improved scorer. But we also know that he has one of the worst isolation field goal percentages in the league. We know that Killian still is struggling to shoot from beyond the arc, especially over the last couple of weeks. And so especially with how well Jaden Ivey's doing on the playmaking front. Killian is just looking less and less necessary going forward in the rebuild. And then you consider what happens in the lottery, because if we land Victor Wembanyama, then yeah, I would assume that would be the direction we go. And with that, you still have the three guards in Cade, Ivy and Killian. You probably still move on from Corey Joseph at some point this offseason. But even then, with Killian, if he doesn't show some form of improved play, because over the next couple of years, the Pistons are going to want to start winning games and improving and start taking a step. One area they might have to take a step and improve will be that backup point guard role. And that's going to be where I think Killian is going to have to, over the course of the next, stretch of games, like after All-Star break, I hope he can show some form of consistency on both ends of the court, because it just seems like it's just he rides the wave quite a bit of the highs and lows, which granted is normal for a young player to do. But at the same time, when you're a guy like Killian and your lows are as low as they are, and when your highs right now are, like average, NBA point guard, you got to figure out how to find that medium, how to find that balance, and quite frankly, how to be more consistent. I mean, we saw with Sadiq, part of the reason why he was traded was this consistency. I saw people bringing up on Twitter the reality that Bojan was traded, or where Bojan was acquired this season and came in and took the job of Sadiq Bey. And we actually talked about that on the podcast before the season started, about how that was going to be a test of Sadiq's consistency, because Bojan is a guy who can come in and score at such a high level on a night-to-night basis. I mean, we've seen Bojan, even with his elevated role and the amount of shots he has to take, he's still a borderline 50, 40, 90 candidate. I mean, for heaven's sakes, he had 33 points on 11 of 18 shooting the other night against the Raptors. I mean, the guy's just a consistent bucket. But at the same time, it's also not a coincidence that this team just happens to do better when they have the pairing of Jaden Ivey and Alec Burks on the court. The offense just seems to flow more. There's times where, when Killian's playing off ball, where it just seems like he doesn't really know what to do or what direction to take or how to really play the situation. And so it's kind of one of those things where, especially in this league, I get that Killian is really effective with the ball. And I know there's a lot of fans where there's this kind of weird rivalry or this weird civil war within the fan base of who they want to see succeed, like Jaden Ivey or Killian Hayes. But ultimately, I think that's just a weird thing to have, because at the end of the day, they're both just players that are on the same team that are trying to chase a common goal, but at the same time are human beings. And naturally, yeah, there is competition, and this is a business. And the reality of it is that the Pistons have more reason and more of an inclination to invest in a player like Jaden Ivey with the results that we've seen thus far. Seeing that, Jaden Ivey has shown all-star potential. He's already a significantly better offensive player than Killian Hayes. He already is showing that he can be just as good, if not a better playmaker than Killian Hayes. We're seeing that his shot selection a lot of times is better than Killian Hayes. I've just been blown away by Ivey's maturity. And I think, he's been making a significant case that he needs to have the ball in his hands. And he needs to be able to run the offense as well. We talked a lot about how this offense runs with Cade Cunningham and runs through Cade Cunningham, which is still 100% true. And he's still going to be the primary ball handler no matter what. But when you have a guy like Jaden Ivey who can also play make at the level that he can, and we have two guys that are as effective as Cade and Ivey can be, that could be outright dangerous. I mean, we're seeing, the Kyrie Luka pairing. I mean, even though they're dog on the defensive end, we still see how dangerous those two can be together offensively. When you have two guys who are so dynamic like they are, I mean, yeah, you want to have a backcourt like that. And so I'm excited to see, the improvements that Ivey can continue to make down the stretch this season, but also how we can take that into the next season, what that looks like paired with Cade Cunningham, because I think, quite frankly, I think it's going to be fascinating to watch, especially with whoever they get in the draft this season. And I mean, especially if they end up getting another guard, if they end up getting, a Scoot Henderson, if that's the player that ends up landing in Detroit's lap, I mean, quite frankly, that all but makes the case for, bye-bye Killian at that point. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. I'm going to be fascinated to see how this team performs down the stretch, just, in general, the individual players and the battles that they're going to be having, and just, the runway that a lot of these prospects are going to be given and the chances that they're going to have. I think we're going to see a lot of things revealed about like who these players are and, what some of these players' ceilings and potential can be. But also, we're going to see a lot of what these guys need to work on in the offseason and how this team can make additions to improve going into next season. So I'm excited for that as well. You're definitely going to want to be subscribed here because we're going to be covering all things Detroit Pistons, but also the NBA as a whole, because that's what we do here on From Half Court. We cover the Pistons and the entire NBA, but that's going to do it for today's video. I would love to know what you think of the Ivy playmaking and the skills that he's been showing, but also what you think should happen with Killian Hayes. But that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.